Tick tock, tick tock. No, not that Chinese social network. It's the clock. It's ticking. We all know wizards, Gandalf, Doctor Strange, are never late and always arrive exactly when they mean to. But how about gods? Because where is that Thor Love and Thunder trailer? Way overdue in my book. So wake up, Mr. Feige, give us some love, give us some thunder. Hello and welcome to the review of Champions. Today we're going to talk about the Batman. And with me are Mr. Lord Deathman.
Hey everyone.
Mr. Arch Stanton.
What's up, guys? Good to talk.
And Mr. Taylor First.
Hey, Batman.
Yeah, Batman. Before we start, I would like to ask you all to hit that like and subscribe button and maybe join our forum on Sakar. Sakar.freeforums.net. It's a small forum, but it's a nice forum. Nice people, nice conversation. Sign up. You can be on the podcast or review. Just sign up. We're going to talk spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, go check it out first and then come back to the video. So let's dive into it. I want to get a quick round from everybody, quick thoughts, and then after that we're going to have a deeper discussion. Taylor, take it away.
The Batman. Good news and bad news. Good news. This movie is better than The Dark Knight. Bad news. Last week I stepped in dog poop that was better than The Dark Knight, so it's not a hard bar to get over in my book. Okay? But overall, I enjoyed this movie. It has a lot of good points. There are some things I did not like about it, and we will get into that. But overall, slightly positive.
Okay, if you're going to find a burning bat signal in your front lawn next week, we're not involved. Arch?
Yeah, I think overall it's a good movie. I didn't find it particularly entertaining, however, and there's a few reasons for that. But overall, it's all right. But I might even go back, and I'm going to throw this out here. I might even go back and watch Batman Forever before I'd watch this again, just because it's more entertaining. So we'll leave that there.
Okay, well, Lord Deathman, I know you have some love for the Batman. Give me.
What? I mean, after those two deep trolls, how should I follow that?
Yeah,
right?
You have to defend DC's honor.
Yeah. Well, as you guys know on the board, I tried to be very positive about the film. It's an excellent film. I think it's really a technical marvel in terms of Batman films. It's beautifully shot, has great cinematography. It's very atmospheric. I love that aspect of it. And I do think it's a very confident and distinct vision of the character. I think Matt Reeves managed to put his own stamp on the character in the film, which is one of the big concerns I had about the film. And I would even go as far as to say that this feels like it is a Batman for a new generation, not necessarily for Nolan fans, although I think Matt Reeves' vision owes a lot to Nolan, and definitely not if you were coming from the Schumacher sort of era of Batman. And I do have some issues that I want to talk about in more depth about the film itself. So I don't know if that's going to be equivalent to me sort of inking my own poison pen greeting card to the Batman.
Okay. Personally, I love the movie. My only real criticism is that it was a little bit too long and they should have cut like half an hour, 45 minutes out of the ending. Then I think the movie would have flown a little bit better. But overall, I really, really love the movie. I saw it with my dad and my wife, and we're all in agreement that this was one of the better Batman movies, if not the best Batman movie. Saying that I consider The Dark Knight a Joker movie, but that's another discussion. You know what, Taylor? Why is it better than dog poo?
Why is it better than The Dark Knight? Is that what you asked me?
Yeah. A little bit colorful,
Well,
but
I've never cared much for The Dark Knight. I don't hate it, but I've never cared much for it. I didn't like the interpretation of Batman. I didn't like the heavy-handedness of it. I mean, just bottom line up front, it's a very subjective thing. I like my superhero movies to be action-adventure oriented, stand up and cheer at the end after a huge roller coaster ride type thing. The Nolan movies, especially The Dark Knight, is just dark, all right? And you're just depressed at the end of the movie. You know, there's nothing, great about it. This movie, on the other hand, like I said, I liked a lot of things about it, but again, it did, the tone was very Nolan-esque in the darkness, and the system is corrupt from top to bottom. It has to be washed away by a flood, and everyone has to be replaced by, new, totally clean people or whatever it is. But what I liked about this movie, and there's a lot of things I liked about this movie, the stuff that Lord Deathman mentioned in his opening, the technically beautiful. There's some gorgeous shots in this movie, the cinematography, the camera work. Again, though, so dark. Is that atmosphere that, Bruce Wayne's a billionaire, but he can't afford a decent light bulb in his breakfast room, for crying out loud? I mean, everything doesn't have to be that dark, okay? But again, cinematography, gorgeous. Shots, gorgeous. Action scenes, overall, good. One I didn't like that much, but overall the action scenes were very well done. Acting and casting, all good. I liked all the acting. Excellent acting. Writing, now we're on the negative side. I don't think it was that well written. I think it had a couple of real issues, and which led to the complaint that we've already heard, is it's too long. It is too long. All right. All you filmmakers out there that are watching us right now, I know there's thousands of you. No solo superhero movie ever needed to be 3 hours long. And if you make one, you don't know how to tell a story. You just don't. Okay? You need to learn how to be succinct. All right. There was 2 times in this movie where I literally thought it was over. I was going to go to the bathroom before the end credit scene happened, and then I had to stop because it wasn't over. I thought it was over. All right. So again, too long. Didn't really like the Riddler's plot. The Riddler's acting, again, the acting was great. I didn't like his look, the costume, and I didn't like his character that much. All right. He wasn't Riddler enough for me. He was just your generic serial killer, psycho guy, who wrote really weird riddles, and the riddles weren't real well written. Gets back to my issue with the writing. So long story short, that's where I'm at with this movie. Overall, pretty good, but some issues.
Yeah, what fell a little bit flat for me with the Riddler was basically the guy doesn't show up until the very end. At least then you find out who it is. But that person was never seen as that person earlier in the movie. So it doesn't mean anything. It's just a generic guy that comes from underneath that suit. It has no emotional impact or any dramatic effect. It's just a nerdy guy sitting at a counter drinking his coffee. Yeah, exactly. And actually, if that's what was my problem with the ending. It didn't need that whole flood subplot thing that was going on. That was redundant. I mean, they could have done it a little bit more cleverly. I totally agree. I think the ending was not really well written. The execution was perfect, but that's where the movie failed for me. Overall, good movie. Still, that part failed. Lord Deathman.
Yeah, I just wanted to add about the flood subplot or plot development. If you didn't have it, you would almost have agreed with the Riddler until it's proven that he's like a psychotic that wants to commit mass murder at the end of it. Without it, you might have been able to putting aside the murdering of people, innocent people, him going after, he's not that much different from the Batman in terms of, what their mission is. It's just he's willing to go to a different extreme up until that point.
Wouldn't that also not be more interesting if you could have agreed with the Riddler?
I can't say that. I don't think I'd want to agree with anybody who kind of looks like the Zodiac Killer.
That's another story. But I mean, isn't it more interesting if you have like, sorry, I'm falling back to Marvel again. I know it's a sin when you're talking about a DC movie, but if you look at Civil War, you could feel for both sides. Both sides were right, both sides were wrong. That made the movie more interesting. Well, in this case, if the Riddler, if he had a point.
And that's what I'm trying to get at. I think we're living in an era which is deeply anti-authoritarian, right? Most people don't want somebody else to tell you what to do, and nobody really trusts authoritative figures to be as honest and as forthright as they used to be, way back in the day for boomers or whoever you were trusting as an authority figure. If you see a cop today, your feelings about that person is much different than they were 20 years ago. So the idea that there's, corruption at the highest levels, this is something I think that, a lot of young people can sort of get behind just because of the way young people are thinking today. And I could be reading the tea leaves wrong on this, but I think that they did have the Riddler sort of as this sort of, I'm going to expose all this corruption. He's not much different than, like a YouTuber with a microphone, except that he will bludgeon you over the head and you will die from blood loss.
Okay. I'll circle back to you later for just more thoughts from you. Arch?
Yeah, I think you're talking about sympathizing with the villain, and I think that's interesting. There's a couple different levels to that. Like, you can understand how they got to that position. Yeah. And why they're doing what they're doing without agreeing with them or thinking that was the right course of action to take, even though
you can agree with somebody's thoughts and point of view, but you don't have to necessarily agree with the actions they take.
Right, exactly. Like, you can still think you can get how they rationalize that this is a thing to do, but disagree with the actions they ultimately took.
Exactly. Well, Arch, you can elaborate right away.
Oh, the whole thing?
Yeah.
Sure.
If you're ready for it.
Yeah, no, I'm ready to go. So I agree with Taylor and Deathman on the general overall good quality of the film. It hits a lot of marks that you guys have already talked about, acting and just the way it's shot, the way it looks, the action is generally really good. I don't really technically have anything that is good. I wasn't going in there trying to evaluate where it's failing technically or anything like that. It all works. I think it's good. I think where I don't really have any strong impact on this is I don't think it makes an impact in any sort of way. I don't think there's any moment that gets paid off in any sort of big way where I'm like, yes, that was the, that felt good. I didn't have a feel good moment in the entire film. And, just full disclosure, this film was always going to be a challenge to get there for me. I'm a little Batmaned out, as you guys know, so like this one was going to have a uphill climb to get me really on board with it. But I guess I would sum up where it doesn't make an impact, like sort of with, we'll just start with the riddles. I don't think there was anything particularly clever about them or where they led or anything like that. There's a point later, like late in the film, where they're having that meeting, the Riddler and Batman are having a meeting with Riddler in prison, and he's like, "What? You didn't figure it out yet?" And then that I actually felt like a good amount of suspense there. I'm like, "Oh, what is going on? What is the clever thing that's about to drop?" And there wasn't anything. Like, you just realize that he ends up looking at the the carpet, the tool, and there's a big map that just tells him what's going on, right underneath the carpet. There's nothing. I don't know. I just didn't feel anything clever about that. It was like, okay. And then right after that, you follow up with the water plot, and all of Gotham is built under the water line. Is it really? That's news to me. I don't. It just seemed kind of like, where did that come from? Like that wasn't set up anywhere or anything, and it doesn't seem like something that would make any sense. So it's just like, all right, this is a thing, I guess. I don't know. Just none of it really like seemed like a wow, that's a cool moment. It just seemed like a okay kind of thing. So I didn't really feel anything significant out of any of it, even though it was all presented well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but that's exactly what I meant when the movie fell flat at that point, where all of a sudden you get a random guy coming out of a suit, having a random plot, and never any setup, never any emotional connection to the Batman or to Gotham or to the mayor or whatever, nothing.
Right.
It just came out of nowhere.
That's what I kind of felt about it. And I did have one question that I was curious about this one particular shot. This is a little bit more of a nitpick, which is fine, but I was actually curious about it during the film. There's a scene where Selina, you figure out that her and I want to get the right, it's not Maroni, it's Falcone. Yeah. That Falcone is her father, and she confronts him, and she's got a gun pointed on him. Like he's like right there. He's like in the same room. He's like 10 feet away from her or something, and they focus on him looking like he's about to die. They focus back to her. She fires the gun, and it hard cuts to Batman somewhere else in the building fighting off some thugs. And then you're like, okay, she just killed him. At least I was. And then it cuts back a little while later, and like she's now without her wig and sneaking around, like trying to find something. And then you see that Falcone is like trying to hide from her. And I was like, wait, didn't she just kill him? I was so confused. I didn't understand what had just happened there. And now I'm still wondering, like, how did he get away from the point blank range gunfire? I don't know what happened there. Did I miss something? Maybe I did.
I hadn't noticed that, so I'm sorry, I can't comment.
Okay. I just thought I'd throw that out there because I was
I read it on the board, but I didn't notice it while watching the movie. So I'm sorry, I can't comment.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Lord Deathman, both Taylor and Arch and me have been complaining about the Riddler and his plot out of nowhere. Did Jim Carrey did it better?
Well, I don't know if the Riddler. I don't know if the Riddler really makes for a good Batman villain. Even in the comic books, I remember in the 90s when they tried to sort of upgrade the Riddler and make him more of a deadly and dangerous sociopath, and it was this bizarre plot about black magic, and you'd really have to. I mean, Batman stabs a dog in the story. I remember that very first story I read. I could give an issue number that you could drop in the comments where they tried to make him really a threat to Batman. But I think when you have a villain like Riddler in the movie, it dictates the type of Batman that you're going to have in that movie as well. The Riddler isn't a physical threat. He can't really fight, so you're not going to see a surgically skilled, hyper aggressive fighting Batman. This is going to be a battle of wits and not necessarily a battle of who knows the deepest martial arts. But a part of my in-depth review is to really get these two things out of the way. The Batman is not my favorite Batman film. I think it is very good. I thought it was extremely entertaining while I was watching it, and I think that Matt Reeves is really progressing as a director. Each and every one of his films just seems to get a little bit better for me as I watch them. So I was glad about that. Batman Begins is still my favorite Batman film. I don't really hold The Dark Knight in the high regard that most fans do. I just think the mythic quality, the gothic sort of Batman, that nearly horror fantasy take on the character that makes him more larger than life is better than the idea that you have to keep pushing him into this grounded and everything is real. We still owe a lot to the Nolan era. Like Reeves can't quite step out of that shadow. And again, it just gets like if the next Batman film is more grounded than this one, we're really going to see how ludicrous it will feel for a guy who's dressed like Count Dracula to be slowly walking into a crime scene with other crime scene professionals and technicians, like trying to figure out what's going on. It is getting to a point of like kind of ridiculousness. But Pattinson's not my favorite Batman either. I still give that honor to Christian Bale / Adam West. And although I will say Pattinson has created a very nuanced character. The movement of the character is very slow and deliberate. He is an actor in that true classical sense of an actor who created his own character and his own take, and I respect him immensely for having done that. But his Batman is just a bit too sluggish for me and too interested in revenge, more so than he should be a little bit more aligned with justice. there's this kind of edgelord thing to him that wasn't resonating with me. I think, again, younger, maybe millennial and on audiences kind of feel that Vengeance Jones and, watching him pummel someone to death in a non-surgical fashion is like, that's for them. But he seemed almost unconcerned with the safety of Catwoman while sending her on that mission. I thought that didn't feel very Batman-ish. He doesn't really get interested or concerned with people until that third act that seems kind of grafted on, where he's leading people out of the darkness with a torch suddenly and doing all of those kinds of things that we should think, standing around with first responders trying to get a victim onto the house. I had to laugh out loud at that part. But still, none of that really detracted from my suspension of disbelief and the world that Reeves created while I was watching the film. I think it's a very good outing. I think Batman fans should be really proud of this film. I think it represents the character well, whether you agree or disagree with the creative vision. And I just want to say, unqualified, other than the few problems I've mentioned, I really did enjoy the Batman.
Yeah. Taylor?
Lord Deathman is right. His comment about the guy in the bat suit walking into the crime scene and talking to the cops and everything. Again, that works in a surreal, comic booky, fantasy action adventure type movie. But if you make these things too grounded, it doesn't work. And I felt the exact same way about The Dark Knight. Literally, when I was watching The Dark Knight, I felt like at any moment Gordon would say, "Will you take that ridiculous costume off, Bruce? This is serious." We're talking about real people being brutally murdered here in the most horrific ways. Okay, so again, if you make these things too grounded, don't make it a superhero movie. Just make it a movie about a rogue cop or something. It doesn't. It gets crazy. Now there are a couple of things in this movie, just to, again, following up on what Lord Deathman said. Again, I love the acting. Penguin was great. Looking forward to seeing his series. Although that whole great action scene with the whole chase of Penguin didn't really lead to anything. All we learned from at the end of that was the world's greatest detective doesn't have a computer that can translate Spanish properly, apparently, in his bat cave. That's all we learned from that whole scene. And I don't know how many civilians died in those explosions on the road, but you'd think he'd feel bad about that. Okay. Second one, Catwoman. The acting was fine. I had no problem with Zoe Kravitz doing Catwoman, but I'm not sure why she was in the movie at all. Other than it's a Batman movie and we want to set up sequels, so we're going to put Catwoman into this movie. But she didn't really play a role. Certainly not as Catwoman. And really, who's not going to recognize her? She's got a ski mask with like one tiny little strip of cloth across her face. Anyone who's ever met her is going to know that that's Selena Kyle. Which again, works fine if you're going for a comic booky action adventure pulpy movie. But if you expect me to take this as a serious commentary on society and Oscar potential, then don't expect me to go along. Okay. So just now to my last point, there were a couple of things in this movie that I didn't like, but I'm chalking them up to the fact that this is an early version of Batman, and I expect to see changes in the next one. For example, his costume was a little bit clunky. I'm hoping we'll see a more sleek costume and better tech in the next. I like the Batmobile, but I'm expecting to see better tech in the next movie. That flying squirrel suit thing, he better upgrade that so he doesn't kill himself the next time. But I'm expecting that to get fixed. But then lastly, the whole beacon of hope thing and how to not make things worse. All right. So if he's still just as dark and just as brooding and just as eating breakfast in the dark Bruce Wayne as he was in this movie, I'm calling foul. Okay, he needs to be a Batman that's a beacon of hope that hands guys over to the cops after he catches them, and a Bruce Wayne who's out there contributing to charity and living up to his family's good name and fixing any mistakes his family made in the past. So they better do that. If it's Dark Knight 2.0 where everything is freaking dark and depressive again, then they're gonna lose me even more.
Yeah. So, by the way, I thought it was an odd choice what they did with Thomas Wayne, actually making him like a liaison with the mob, with Falcone.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's okay that he's not, he's not a perfect man, but really, he hired gangsters to threaten a journalist who was going to expose the fact that his wife, had been in a mental institution or something. First of all, how had that been kept a secret for as many years as it was in the first place?
Actually, what would the
hiring gangsters to threaten the man?
Yeah, Lord Deathman, I go to you first, then to Arch.
You beat me to it by 1 second, both you and Taylor, Grandmaster, in terms of talking about the Waynes, especially Thomas Wayne. And that really, I hope that can help me articulate my point about corruption. So I like the fact that the Batman has a mystery to it, which you've never seen in a Batman film before. But then the mystery itself and its resolution isn't really all that compelling. It really amounts to there's corruption at the highest levels in the city. And the Waynes go from being really unimpeachable figures that you used to see in the Batman mythos, who are almost saint-like figures, to now being insinuated in that corruption, because I think modern audiences would feel like they relate to the idea of, I mean, I think you need a pre-Nixon era audience to be like, oh, there can't be corruption in the government. Like the president would never do that. You would really need that. You have to go that far back to find an audience that doesn't automatically feel like there's corruption in the government, and like that's the default. So that's why this resolution to the mystery doesn't feel all that compelling. It's like, okay, this dude was in on it, and this other dude was in on it, and so forth and so on. They've been unmasked. But yeah, I just wanted to get that note in there. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about performances, just some quick notes. I thought Zoe Kravitz handled the physicality of the character of Catwoman very well. I don't know if they just had an army of stunt women that backed her, but I didn't really feel that her acting, in the dramatic pieces, one, I didn't feel she had a lot of chemistry with Pattinson, and two, I didn't feel like her acting was anything special. It existed, it was there, it was competent, didn't really blow me away. I know everyone's talking about Penguin, but if you took off all that makeup and you just let Colin Farrell do that kind of ridiculous New York accent, I wonder where we'd be in the discussion. That's just a hypothetical, but obviously that makeup liberated him to kind of do this wild. It is almost as if he is in another movie. That his performance is kind of that good. And then again, a lot of praise to Pattinson for carving out his own Batman that has his own movement, his own speech cadence. You can tell that if he wasn't working out in the gym, at least he was working out on, those parts of the performance.
I like Jeffrey White's Commissioner Gordon actually a lot. Arch?
Yeah, just some random thoughts. Like, yeah, I agree that him as Jeffrey Wright as Gordon was pretty fun. I enjoyed him. As far as Zoe Kravitz goes, I thought there was an odd sort of thing with how they introduced Catwoman, and I think this plays off of what Taylor was talking about, that she might not have been necessary in the film. I was okay with having her in there. I just thought it was interesting with the number of conveniences in which she's there. Like, he first runs into her because he's there tracking down another girl that the DA was with, and she happens to be roommates with her and also happens to be working at the same club and in the same room where she's having the Penguin conversation with, and happens to be Catwoman, who happens to be the illegitimate daughter of Falcone, which just, there was a lot of stuff there where she gets like woven into, which just happened to play out. So I don't know. Conveniences happened there, but there were just a lot of them surrounding her character, I thought, so it was kind of weird. But
it's almost like it is Lois Lane in Batman versus Superman. Oh, what did I say now?
No, I think so. I did appreciate all the performances. This goes back to another thing Taylor, I believe, was mentioning, where I hope he gets more positive, because I didn't really. I thought Pattinson was good, really good as Batman. I didn't care about Bruce Wayne at all, though. He's dark and moody, and he's got this shaggy goth hair thing going on, and I just didn't care about the Bruce Wayne aspect of it here. But I can see that sequels would have him grow and be a more positive influence, or get to that sort of level that we're kind of used to seeing, at least in that direction, which is fine. So I can see that they could get there. Overall, though, I thought this film felt like, I didn't know where to fit this in it, but I thought it felt like what I always imagined like a third Nolan film series to be, where you got Penguin in, where you got characters like Riddler there. It's dark. This feels, I never cared about The Dark Knight Rises really all that much. I thought it felt like oddly out of place, like you skipped something. And this feels like what you skipped to me. This feels like the third film in the Nolan trilogy, not a brand new. It really does.
Actually, I see what you mean.
Right.
Okay. I must admit, we got HBO Max this week in my country. Yay, finally. And my first stream was Batman 1989. And if I had to pick between Batman 1989 and The Batman, I think I will go Batman 1989 every time. It's fun. It's whack as hell. I mean, it totally not grounded, and I love that. Where is this kind of movie from DC? I ask you, panelists. Is it time for DC to change their game when it comes to Batman? Lord Batman.
I do think it is time for them to move into some new territory. Again, the shadow of Nolan looms so large on this franchise that I think every future director coming to tell a Batman story would feel like they were not credible if they couldn't fit themselves into this grounded framework. It's going to take a real maverick to get us back to, and I love Batman Begins. Again, fear gas, that's stuff you'd see in a comic book movie, right? The hallucinations, the imagery that goes with that is like, it feels like it comes from a panel. It feels surreal. It feels, action adventure oriented, as Taylor would say. I also wanted to wag my finger just a little bit at the screenwriters for kind of taking things from Saw and Seven. I think they were like, well, that movie was made in 1995. That's long enough for nobody to have remembered Kevin Andrew Walker and David Fincher's take on, the Gothic detective films. So we're going to have a scene where our serial killer turns himself in at this pivotal point in the movie. I don't know that they needed to do like a rat trap around somebody's head to take that kind of thing from Saw. So just it's woven into the film in such a way that it's not too distracting, but it just felt like somebody said, oh, we need to push harder into this dark and grounded territory. What influences, I could kind of imagine myself at that writer's movie. What influences what's the most grittiest thing out there that we could borrow a little bit from? And I thought it was a little unnecessary.
I know of a director who would bring us back to the Batman we miss. I mean, Adam West. I mean, Michael Keaton. That kind of Batman. I would want to see that again. James Gunn, could he pull it off? Arch?
Yeah, he could. James, I'm fully confident in James Gunn, man. I think that guy could do anything. But just to your larger point, yeah, I think DC needs to get more fun, and I think they've done some fun films, so they can do it. I don't know why this character maybe can't get there. I think it's because they've had a battle with how campy this character can get, and that's been on the whole reason we have the Nolan series is they cross that line the other direction. So. I don't know. I don't know where they go from there. But as I started off saying, and I'm going to back this up, like I might rather watch Batman Forever, and I'm being serious. It's not a better film by any means. This is clearly the better technical film for sure on every level. But it's not any fun. It just isn't, or at least it's not for me. I don't know if I have any plans to rewatch it. I'd go watch Batman Returns again before this. I'd watch Batman '89 again before this. I'd watch at least the first two of the Dark Knight series before this, so it's better than a lot of those. Not Begins or the Dark Knight for me. I definitely put those ahead of this, but it's just not more fun. I'd rather go watch Batman Forever. I really would. It's just more entertaining and it's more fun, and it's just, I don't know, it's just more enjoyable overall, I think.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'd add to Stanton's notes about fun. It's not just we're not here like in a kindergarten just trying to have fun with these movies. That's a part of it, and it's a big part of it. But the Batman isn't very it's not exhilarating or exciting or it's just thrilling as a superhero movie, especially something that I feel like Batman Begins is. And I do think that they need to bring that back. These can't be intensely gloomy and somber affairs that sort of ramp up the violence and the threat level without bringing that level of exhilaration that we get in the genre.
Yeah, because Taylor, I mean, we got the Dark Knight trilogy. We got, well, I don't know what Snyder did with the Batman, but whatever. And we got now Matt Reeves, the Batman. It gets old, or not?
Yes, it does get old. And I don't know what they're going to do. Actually, at the end, I wanted to talk a little bit about what DC's doing in general. But they have done fun movies. Shazam, Aquaman. They've done fun movies that have been very successful. They've had a good
Suicide Squad.
Suicide Squad. There's another one. So yeah, I'd like to see this. Now they've got, the Batman is in another universe. If they want to keep that, the dark grounded universe, okay. But I'd be just as happy as if in the next Pattinson movie, he's taken on Clayface and Poison Ivy. Let's do this. All right. Let's bring the zany, not zany, but the surreal, the fantasy back into it,
Mm-hmm.
and do it right. And I think the director who did this movie could do a great job with that kind of movie. And when you talk about, do they need to change it and get another director? Everyone should remember, back before Batman '89 was made, before Tim Burton was given that movie, a guy named Sam Raimi tried to get the rights to make a Batman movie, and he wasn't able to get them.
Yeah.
He made Darkman instead, which was his own superhero that he made up, and which is a great movie, by the way. But yeah, give it to someone like Sam Raimi, or there's many others, of course, but I bet Sam Raimi would have a ball with Batman.
Oh, he can be. He can also be fun, and I think we need that if we're soon. I mean, otherwise DC really gets old. Yeah, it's not for me. Anybody else thinking? Have any thoughts about DC and what they need to do?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say one thing. I just wanted to point out, just give some credit, and I'm not necessarily saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm saying want to give some credit to just how much content DC is producing right now, how much they've got out now and coming out in the very near future. I made a partial list going from theatrical releases to HBO Max to the CW. The Batman, Shazam 2, Aquaman 2, The Flash, Black Adam, League of Super Pets, Blue Beetle, Titans, Doom Patrol, Harley Quinn, Pennyworth, The Sandman, Young Justice, Peacemaker, Penguin, Arkham Asylum, CW, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Batwoman, Stargirl, Superman and Lois, Naomi, Gotham Knights. That is a lot of effort put in by somebody over at DC. And like I said, it's not necessarily good or bad, but at least they are going full throttle, and they're not holding back, and they're producing content in mass amounts for all mediums. I mean, that doesn't even count the straight to DVD cartoons that they put out a couple times a year. And I just want to give them some credit. They are fully committed to producing DC content for the screen.
Absolutely, and not everything is my cup of tea, but can't be for everything for everybody. Yeah?
And I think that could be the point to some degree, Grandmaster, that they're making things for wherever your entry point is, whatever your age is, whatever your interest is, in what corner of the universe. So I'm right there with Taylor in terms of giving them a lot of credit for having a steady stream of new content. My only wish, and if you're asking me the question what they should do, is it would be nice if some of it was tied into a cohesive shared universe that you could kind of follow that saga. And they could have all that other stuff on the side too, as hors d'oeuvres that you can kind of go in and out of. But it would be nice to see something that really works like the MCU happening on the DC side, because they've got the characters, they've got the history. That's all I would ever ask of them. And again, while I know that this discussion, it's really great that we're talking about the Batman a couple of weeks after it came out, so we're kind of jumping over that kind of afterglow that the fans tend to have, where it's kind of verboten to say a negative word about a Batman movie, and you kind of have to just ignore that you have to dodge that 2 weeks of the honeymoon period. But I think we've had a sensible, critical discussion about the film, and the overall take on it is it's a very good film, and I wouldn't mind if DC continued at this level of quality with some of the adjustments that we've been talking about.
Okay. We're gonna rate. And I'm gonna say that, and I'm gonna do Arch last, so he can now think of anything. So many riddles out of bets or anything. I don't know what he's gonna come up with. But Taylor, I want to hear your rating for the Batman.
The Batman.
Yeah.
Actually, it's the Batman because it doesn't start with a vowel. It's the Batman. 7 out of 10.
Okay.
Pretty good.
Lord Deathman.
I agree with Taylor. I would give this movie 7 batarangs out of 10.
I'm gonna do it one better. I'm gonna go 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. If they had cut the ending differently, I would really put it up there with The Dark Knight, Batman Begins, and stuff like that. But yeah, I just can't because they messed up that ending. 8 out of 10. Arch, let's have it.
I had a more extensive review. I'll give you the short version of it, but they were serving at AMC theaters. They always do these themed drinks for big movies, and they had what amounted to a whiskey and Coke that they called the Bat. So I had 2 of those, but I needed 4. So I'm going to go with 2 out of 4 whiskey and Cokes. 4 would have gotten me in. 4 would have gotten me there.
Okay, I didn't catch anything.
Cultural differences there, ladies.
Yeah, now I suffer the fact that I'm not a native English speaker. But anyway, that will conclude our review for the Batman. Before we finish, I would like to ask you all to hit that subscribe button and notification bell on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter, like our Facebook page, join the forum on Sakar. That way you will never miss us and we won't have to miss you. Thank you and see you next time for our next movie or series review. We're gonna do Moon Knight. It's coming. Bye.